The staff at Weightstone Vineyard Estate and Winery are no strangers to the haunting music of two-time Golden Melody Award winner Sangpui Katetepan Mavaliu. His song Sadeku Nasenan is played at harvest time and when grapes are pressed and their juices left to age. Now, other than that, what does it take to create an award-winning wine with grapes that are grown in a land that would otherwise be hostile to them? This week, we hang out with vineyard owner Vivian Yang to learn about how this uniquely Taiwanese vineyard overcomes challenges, including climate and geography, to create a wine considered to be one of the region's finest.
So here, we started because of that grape I was telling you about. I will taste it, Musan. And its original name is Taichung No. 3 because it's from the Taichung Research Station. Mm-hmm. And it's third varietal that they developed. And it was very unique in its aromatic profiles. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's got a DNA of the muscat of Alexandria. Mm-hmm. And then so my father just took a liking and just wanted to see if it's possible, out of curiosity, and then making a wine that can be an honest reflection of who we are, right? And if wine, we believe, is an agricultural product that reflects nature, and if people travel, people drink different wines from around the world, why not having a Taiwanese wine? If it's good enough. It has to be good enough first, right?
Yang didn't begin by thinking she would only work with Taiwan grapes.
I started not knowing anything. And of course, my consultant at the time would say, no, you have to do vinifera. That's the international grapes. But we did import vines from abroad, but it has to go through quarantine because wine grape has a lot of diseases across the world. And of course, the table grape Kyoho is a big money crop in Taiwan. And therefore, it makes sense that the quarantine bureau has to be overly protective because they want to block off, to enter Taiwan.
So your vines died when they imported.
Yes. It went through 3 years of really stringent quarantine protocols, like basically in a closed-up greenhouse. And, plants, they can't live indoor. And so after 3 years, they don't really give you a verdict, but you know that the vine won't survive once it's out. So I basically gave up. And then that actually forced me to plant local grapes.
As a winemaker, Yang faces a unique set of challenges.
The reason why Taiwan cannot grow grapes well is because we have too much rain and therefore there's rot, there's mold. And then imagine if you're always sick, do you feel like you want to? Exactly. And the vines are exactly the same.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Like, let's say you try to protect it and let's say it rains for a month and it's all diseased, it's all sick. And then after a month, it's all dry. It just stopped growing. It just kind of abandons life in a way.
Okay.
So I think so what we can do here in Taiwan is trying to give it back as much health as possible. And therefore, no fertilizer, no nothing, just something natural, no tillage, so you don't affect the topsoil, the organic matters. And then you grow one crop a year because traditionally you can grow 2 crops a year. So as a farmer, the nature is your factory. So you're basically taking from nature, isn't it? Yeah. But whenever there is rain and sunshine, the vine can grow. And so traditionally, people have been doing this. Like they do the summer crop, so they harvest in June in Taiwan. Harvest right before typhoon, because typhoon season starts in July, right? Mm-hmm. And then they will wait until typhoon goes, like the strongest is July and August. They prune again in end of August, more as a buabui, buabui, right? Yeah. More of a gambling thing, because you might get blown off, the flowers might get blown off by typhoon. But if they can make it through typhoon, this is extra money, so everybody will do it. But for us, we feel like it's possible doesn't mean that you should do it. Already suffer enough that to grow grapes here, so we try to do 1 crop a year, let it rest properly, and it will show you the grape that it
wants
can
to give you.
Yes, it wants to give you. Exactly.
It wants to give you.
It wants to give you. But it's anything can be a blessing or can be a malice, or it depends on how your mindset is. So like you grow and then you just have to figure it out how to grow and how to make wine out of a a variety that is not typical. And therefore, you find your uniqueness. Isn't that your job? Yes, it is. And so that's what we do. Local grapes, local terroir, and you're trying to make elegant wines. It's very important to make wines that are drinkable, meaning enjoyable, but also showcase that grapes, And so when we say we're trying to make honest wines, meaning like you're trying to make it to be what it wants to be rather than what I wanted it to be, meaning, so you know how most of wines are usually about, in a normal wine world, they're about 13%, 14% alcohol. Mm-hmm. And that's because the grape can naturally ripen to that level. But for us, when the white grape are harvested in August, red grape in September, October, imagine that's 栽赃ang, right? In Taiwan, we harvest in July. That's you can also say that's under ripened, but for us it's ripened because further out we trying to hang it on the vines, it will rot. And so imagine the alcohol will be lower because the sugar level is lower. It's lower. And therefore our wines are usually about 10 to 12, 12% is high.
Asian
10
levels.
to 11.
Asian
right.
level.
So 10 to 11%, and then if you don't do it right, it can taste a bit watery or too light. And some people want that. And actually the trend now is lower alcohol wine. So, without trying to be anything, we are just trying to figure out how this wine should be. So we did the experiments for 2 years and then couldn't be happier. And so right now it's been 10 years. So we started that way in my first vintage, 2014. And we are on our 11th vintage now.
Even though Weightstone began winning awards in 2018, Yang says she's only just figuring things out.
I remember hearing this from somebody, from a winemaker, say to be a proper winemaker, you need to have at least 10 years with your vineyard. And that makes total sense. I totally get it. You are getting to know your grape, your vineyard, your wine. And then after 10 years, you feel like, oh, maybe now I get it.
It's like raising a child.
And maybe. You're still not sure. And that's why I love talking to winemakers. They're just such a funny group of people. I hate to use the word humbled, but you are humbled because you don't know what will happen. You get a chance a year, and the wine sometimes has a life of its own. It will take on something, and you can try to guide it to where it wants to be. But that's still, and how do you have an honest wine where you're not manipulating it, but letting it grow out of its own well, but then still in the right path where you think it should be? So how are you honest without putting too much ego into the wine? That's hard.
Okay, that's my question. How do you put ego into a wine? Do you just do it by manipulating the flavors of the wine?
So wine, when I say the difference between a processed food versus agricultural food, right, is when it's processed, meaning you add a lot, we call it human intervention. Right. So it's high intervention, low intervention. High intervention meaning you say, okay, I'm going to add this to increase on the mouthfeel. I'm going to add this to make the color a little bit more whatever. I'm going to add this. No. So at the end, it's like a lot of makeup. And then, or you can say, no, it is what it is, but you are just maybe having different vessels. Either it's a neutral oak or a new oak that will have a drastic difference on how the flavor profile is. Or it's a stainless steel, or it's an amphora, or it's whatever it is. And then how long you age it or how short it is. So you can. So terroir includes the person that guides it to be. You can't remove the person, otherwise it's just rotten grape, right? And so how does that winemaker interpret the fruit and the land? And there's no right answer. That's why every single winemaker will and every year the winemaker is all evolving too, right? The person is ever changing. So it's there's no definite answer. But if you drink enough of that region's wine of that same grape, and from different winemakers, then maybe you can find some sort of common ground.
That was Vivian Yang of Weightstone Vineyard Estate and Winery. I'm Hope Ngo. Thank you for tuning in.
Aye.